being left-handed would have been a limiting factor for Ehud. Think back in our own country a generation ago. So many children who are left-handed who are forced to be right-handed, even though they're left-handed dominant. No, honey, you need to hold the pencil in your right hand. No, honey, you need to hold it this way. And so much that we want to fit everybody into our mold of being right-handed. But Ehud's left-handedness did not disqualify him from being used by God. Another possible translation of this is that he was hindered in the right hand. Could mean that he was maybe weak and physically limited. Maybe his hand was deformed in some way. You think that's the last person that you would expect God to use in leading a battle and leading an assault. And that may be why no one thought a thing about leaving him alone with the king. Oh, he can't do anything. Look at this guy. He's no threat. But God takes a life that the world ignores, that the world discards, and God can use it for his glory. We find these words in 1 Corinthians 1. But God chose the foolish things of the world to shame the wise. God chose the weak things of the world to shame the strong. He chose the lowly things of this world and the despised things and the things that are not to nullify the things that are, so that no one may boast before him. So many times, like Moses, we give God all the excuses of, well, God, you don't want me. God, I'm not a good talker, and I don't know what to say, and they're not going to listen to me. And we come up with all these excuses. Many times, thinking we're not good enough keeps us from serving God in the way he has planned for us. When we recognize our weakness, when we turn things over to God, that's when he can use us. Missionary Hudson Taylor stated, God chose me because I was weak enough. The person who thinks, hey, I'm here to serve God, I'll do him a favor, he really needs me, is going to accomplish nothing. The person who is weak sees their weakness but trusts in the strength that God provides can do great things. Think about, who does God pick to be his spokesperson in the days of conquest? Little Samuel, the little boy serving at the temple. Who does God pick to overthrow the giant Goliath? Little singing shepherd boy, David. How does God send his son, Jesus? Isaiah 53 says, there was nothing beautiful or majestic about his appearance, nothing to attract us to him. He was despised and rejected, a man of sorrows, acquainted with bitterest grief. We turned our backs on him and looked the other way when he went by. He was despised and we did not care. Remember when they talked to Nathanael about Jesus coming out of Nazareth. He says, Nazareth? Can anything good come out of Nazareth? But God uses our limitations for his glory. There is a young man named Nick Vujicic. It's probably not how you pronounce it. It's my attempt. Who was born with no arms and legs. But instead of throwing himself a pity party and saying, why me? He has sought to let God use him to bring glory to God. He has written numerous books. He travels all across the world giving hope to others. He has started a ministry called Life Without Limbs. And he points others to what God can do in spite of our limitations. Think of Fanny Crosby and all the hymns she wrote even though she was blind. Think of Helen Keller. Think in our day today, Johnny Erickson Tata, and how she has ministered to untold millions of people in spite of her paralysis. We can choose to be sorry for ourselves when we think of our limitations, or we can choose to look to God to work in spite of those limitations. They can become stumbling blocks or stepping stones for us. What are the things you think are your limitations? Say, well, I'm single, or I'm divorced, or I don't have a lot of money, or I can't read real well, or I'm not good standing in front of people. And the reality is all these things are excuses. Whatever you see as your limitation, allow God to use you in spite of your limitations. Instead of focusing on limitations, play to your strengths. What is it that God has uniquely prepared you to do? For Ehud, his left-handedness really was his strength. And we'll see that he allows God to use that strength to win the battle. What's your strength? Maybe you're a good talker. Maybe you make friends easily. Maybe you handle money well. Whatever God has blessed you with as a strength, use that for his glory. So, we need to ask for God's help in the problems we face. We need to use our strengths. Don't focus on the limitations. Focus on how God can use the strengths he's blessed you with. Third thing, we need to plan for success. Notice that Ehud has a plan. We see that when he makes the double-edged knife. He takes this 20-inch knife, notice how he conceals it down on his right thigh. We see his plan that he tells the king he has a secret so he can get the king alone. He gets the king separated from his servants and his guards. Down in verse 15, we see the Israelites sent him with tribute to Eglon, king of Moab. So here is this weak, left-handed man coming with all the tribute money. He's probably the least threatening man at court. But Ehud is simply working out his plan. What was Ehud's strength? God was with him. And that's one of the things we will see as we look at each of the judges. That time after time after time, the thing that made them stand out is that God was with them. Remember, it tells us at the very beginning of the story that God raises him up to be the deliverer of the Jews. And because God is with him, Ehud is bold. Proverbs 28:1 says, "The wicked man flees, though no one pursues, but the righteous are bold as a lion." Even when we have to stand alone, when we know that God is with us, we can be bold. Ehud has a plan. He's got this 20-inch dagger, sharp on both sides. He straps it to his right thigh. And when he comes to court, the guards would search the left thigh. But because that's where they were used to a right-handed man being able to hide a sword and pull it out, Ehud has it on the opposite thigh. So Ehud is able to get the blade in with him. In verse 18, we see Ehud sends back home the men who have carried in the tribute. He wants to be alone with the king. It refers in verse 19 to idols near Gilgal. Very likely, Eglon is a superstitious man. So when Eglon says he has a secret message, that gets Eglon's attention, and he sends everyone out so he alone can hear the message. And Ehud takes the opportunity to strike. And lest we picture Ehud as a terrorist or as a mercenary, once again, remember God is the one who is leading him to act. Because God is using him to provide deliverance for the Jews. We understand that Ehud's actions saved Israel from a cruel enemy oppression. In a similar fashion, a very bloody sacrifice on a Roman cross ensures our eternal salvation. The death of Jesus is not pleasant to envision, yet it is essential for our forgiveness.